The land of the rising sun soon found itself eclipsed by what Achebe calls the birds of death, the Soviet-made planes that began to haunt Biafran skies. In this fourth part of our review of There Was a Country, we move from the intellectual hope of nation building into the darkest corridor of human suffering, the implementation of starvation as the deliberate weapon of war. Achebe is unsparing in his documentation of how the Nigerian federal government moved beyond military combat to a total economic blockade, cutting off food, medicine, and clean water for millions. This strategy was chillingly justified by the Nigerian Commissioner for Finance, Obafemi Awolowo, who argued in the book that starvation is one of the weapons of war, and that there was no reason to feed our enemies fat. For any reader of the work, the imagery of kwashiorkor, of children with blown empty bellies and rust-colored hair, is impossible to erase. Achebe notes that this was the world's first fully televised conflict, where, as Baroness Asquith noted in the British House of Lords, people could see history happening before our eyes through the miracle of television. This sudden visibility of mass suffering brings to mind the observation of Susan Sontag in the Regarding the Pain of Others, where she explores how images of war can either stir a global conscience or result in a numbing voyeurism. Indeed, this media war sparked an unprecedented global response, attracting support from figures like Jean-Paul Sartre and John Lennon, and leading a young student named Mero to set himself on fire at the United Nations to protest the killing of innocent Biafran babies. Achebe's personal accounts of these years is punctuated by a profound moral-shattering grief, most notably the loss of the man he called the finest Nigerian poet of his generation, Christopher Ukigbo. Ukigbo's death in battle at Ikwebe was a poetic tragedy that later led scholar Ali Mazrui to write The Trial of Christopher Ukigbo, a novel that questions whether a great artist ever has the right to sacrifice their creative potential for a political cause. As the war intensified, Achebe himself became a refugee, living in mud houses and underground bunkers, while his own apartment in Enugu was reduced to a huge crater by Nigerian bombs. One of the most heartbreaking moments in the book is Achebe's poem, Refugee Mother and Child, where he describes a mother combing her dying son's hair with a tenderness that feels like putting flowers on a tiny grave. This particular section of the history forces us to grapple with what the author calls mental fatigue and the silent epidemic of mental illness among a people psychologically devastated by the anguish and myriad pressure of war. Achebe uses the staggering statistic that upwards of 50,000 civilians, mostly children, were dying every month at the height of the blockade to lay the moral foundation for his charge of genocide. As we close this chapter of Achebe's account, we are left with the haunting image of vultures circling the rotting bodies on Biafran roads, perching on broken bones of a dead tree. It is a stark reminder of what the anthropologist Stanley Diamond described as the ruining of a rare and genuine national culture at the moment of its birth. In our final episode, we will look at the collapse of the Republic, the bitter experience of surrender, and the hard questions Achebe raises about the legacy of this conflict in modern Nigeria. Don't forget to join me in the last episode of this review. I remain your host, Osho Abiodun. Thank you.